It is April 12th, 2015. Today we're looking at a 1984 Honda ATC200ES. This bike came from Annapolis Valley, Nova Scotia, and it is a survivor. It's all original. Took some TLC and some cleaning, but other than that, well, all original except for the tires, of course, which is really too bad. But everything is there. Even the little rubber tie straps for the throttle cable and the original plastic Honda tie straps for the other cables. I replaced the hand grips, so the hand grips are new, but again OEM. There's some blubbering here on the edge of the seat cover, but I believe that is still probably the original seat cover. Other than that, a little bit of cleaning, motor, oil change. And the one thing that a lot of people tend to never do is clean the oil filter rotor inside of here on the end of the crankshaft next to the centrifugal clutch, which requires that you take, of course, the case cover off, and in most times I assume would be ruining the case cover gasket, which is probably why a lot of people neglected to do or to clean the oil filter rotor, which is really too bad. I don't believe the oil filter rotor had ever been cleaned on this bike. When I took the cover off, probably the first time the case cover had ever been off. And anyways, needless to say, all of that was done. Everything was cleaned, every bit of dirty oil was taken out of the motor. Fresh stuff put in. Still looking at doing a second oil change here at some point in the near future, just to flush it out. Other than that, just cleaning and repainting pretty much everything. Original exhaust, drive shaft, boot, clamps, frame. Redid the racks. Of course, I had to put new rubber straps for the rack holder because one of them was ripped, but I ended up replacing both anyways. The one part that was a little difficult to find was this rubber trunk strap. It seems that, that one was ripped, of course, but they're not easy to come by. I did replace the taillight lens because there was some cracking here in the corner, and there was a slight bit of damage on the actual light housing, which I repaired. But as you can see through the lens, it wasn't a white repair, so that's an imperfection, of course. Other than that, again, more cleaning. Brakes are all in good shape, all the original cables, tried to salvage those. Some were a bit sticky, but I ended up lubing them and just working with them. I was able to free them up. Spark arrestor is obviously gone. The original two bolts are still there. Other than that, obviously I changed the transmission oil, or the diff oil in the back, which really didn't need to be changed, but I did it anyways as I go through everything. Pretty much every nut and bolt was taken out and cleaned. I left the wiring harness intact on the frame, as well as the motor in the frame when I went through it. Just didn't want to pull it all out. And I'm never a big fan of trying to reroute hoses and cables and wires the way they came from the factory. Again, just tried to do a fairly quick cleanup and sort of resto on it. Not that I want to call it a restoration. Restoration is probably a very much overused word. Again, just giving a lots of TLC and elbow grease. Yeah, so other than that, some holes that were drilled in the fenders by the previous owner at some point. And it's passed, which is too bad, but sort of a minor imperfection. All the reflectors are there. The one thing I do want to replace, of course, is these fender fasteners for the flaps onto the actual plastic fender. I do have these special nut backings for them, I just don't have these top screws. And again, I think they were probably originally zinc plated, but I'd like to find some nice sort of button head stainless screws to replace them with. And maybe I can find some of those at some point. And yeah, other than that, keep going. Repainted the exhaust, new exhaust studs, checked the valves, did the timing, or sorry, not the timing, just the cam chain adjustment as always. Pretty good overall. That front fender does have a rip in it, so I'll probably be looking for another front fender. Obviously the transmission is perfectly fine. The recoil is, I can't imagine the recoil was ever really used, because it is tight and works just like brand new. And yeah, then I just cleaned up the fasteners, original fork boots, a couple of minor rips which I attempted to repair with Bondic. Not a very good repair. Hard to say how long that will last. And again, doing the front forks was probably the most work. Trying to sort of rejuvenate the internals with the springs and those dampener rods. One of the dampener rods works, one of the dampener rods doesn't. But anyways, just tried to fix that up, clean it up as best I could. The nylon bushings are fine. Tried to clean up the fork tubes and get rid of the pitting and the rusting. And yeah. Other than that, I touched up some of the paint in the bottom of the tank just to clean it up. And yeah, like I said, the seat, this original. I always see these guys struggling with this online, with this, getting this seat off. So, airbox, battery, all the wiring's good. A little bit of a hiccup here on this sort of fuse. I replaced the air filter with an original air filter, and the filter that came out of it was original, so it didn't really need to be replaced, but I did it anyways. And other than that, you want to do a cold start? Everybody's always big on these cold starts. Anyways, she's cold, absolutely. And yeah. I already turned the fuel on, so maybe I can just turn her on. Hit the start button. Not a lot of cam chain rattle or ticking like most videos you hear, where guys are like, oh, it's, you know, mint shape, works great. No, this one here is real tight, sounds good. No burning oil or anything like that I can notice. It may be running a bit rich. I think it is running quite a bit rich actually, because the pipe was sooted up there when I first got her going, but there's a bit of an exhaust leak I just noticed. I probably have to replace the gasket. I'm thinking the clamp probably let go. Anyways, good old bike.